Yo, what is up YouTube? Redbird here, back with another New World video. Today we're going to talk about the new PvP specific perks coming in the May update and if those deserve a spot on your armor. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what's currently available and what these will be kind of fighting for on a piece of gear. Now, a lot of these are pretty specific to certain situations, which make it challenging to compete with what I would call the big three. The big three is resilient, freedom, and refreshing. Now, these abilities are so good and find their way onto PvP armor across Eternum is because they're pretty generally, they're passive, number one. They don't require any sort of action to take effect. They are very powerful in what they do. There have been some perks that have kind of inched their way close. As far as the armor goes, Shirking Fortification is the one that it rings a bell or really has came to top tier. And, you know, one of the things that I would mention before we go on is that there are also weapon perks with certain builds. And we're talking about Satiable Gravwell. We're talking about Leeching Path of Destiny, Empowering Fireball, Unending Thaw, Nullifying Oblivion, Putrefying Scream. These are these weapon abilities that you just can't do without, and you got to fit those on your armor too. Now, on the weapon side of things, you're usually dealing with the tried and true Keen Vicious. Refreshing Move is a popular one on some weapons. Enchanted, Thwarting Strikes, your chain damages, Keenly Jagged. A lot of these are just very popular perks that are just dependent upon what weapon you're using, as if they are considered to be best in slot or not. So now that that's out of the way, let's look at the new PvP perks in New World. First one is Penetrating Backstab. This is only in PvP. Backstabs penetrate 10% of players' armor. Penetrating Headshot. Headshots penetrate 7% of players' armor. Okay, so these two perks are both weapon perks. They've only currently be seen on weapons in the PTR. And these aren't much different when it comes down to it as Vorpal and Rogue. Now, the difference is, of course, these are completely dependent upon how much armor your enemy has to be effective, whereas Vorpal and Rogue completely are controlled by you and how much damage you output. So I don't think either one of these perks are probably going to find their way onto weapons in New World. Fractured Rend, when block breaking a player, inflict Rend, reducing damage absorption by 12%. For 4 seconds. This is just a bad perk. You don't really want this. This isn't going to find its way on anybody's armor. Purifying Crits. Critical hits remove one debuff from a player or one buff from a player. That's a very interesting one, guys, especially if Fortification or Shirking Fortification finds its way into the meta, because you're going to be able to remove Fortification stacks with crits, and you can crit a lot in PvP. So that Purifying Crits is one to keep an eye on there. Exhausted Exploitation is the next PvP perk that we're going to talk about. Hits against exhausted targets, inflicts slow, reducing movement speed by 15% by 4 seconds. Now, this is not a good one, and the reason is because your enemies have to become exhausted, and usually the exhaustion is completely in control of your enemy. So, you know, you're not going to be able to exhaust your target because they have to dodge or block for that window to open up. So this is a bad perk. I would definitely recommend staying away from this one. Alacritious Punishment. Deal 8% additional damage to players with haste. Again, haste, not a very popular buff to stack in PvP. Not a great perk there. Sturdy Fortification. Blocking attacks as a stack of fortification on self for each blocked hit. That's 20% fortification just from blocking a few attacks of a player. Pretty good there. You know, again, these builds that are trying to one-shot you typically may not care about fortification. You know, if that was Sturdy Empowerment, that'd be a whole nother ball game. But this could find its way into some builds with the Sword and Shield. Shirking Healing. PvP only. After successful dodging an attack, heal for 100%. This does stack. This is just a worse version of Shirking Fortification. I don't think it's going to find its way on armor because, again, you can only heal to 100%, where if you're dodging attacks at 100% health with Shirking Fortification, you're still going to get those fortification stacks. So I don't think this one's going to find its way on armor. Siege Ward. Receive 6% less damage from siege weapons. Never going to... It's just like siege damage. Siege damage actually finds use because you know most people will have a weapon that take it into war if they're on siege team, and they'll take out siege. This one, you're not gonna be on anti-siege team putting on siege ward armor. It's just not gonna happen. Not a very good perk. Not gonna find its way. Mortal Empowerment. Player kills grant a persistent 2% damage bonus that lasts either 20 minutes or until down, death, game mode, exit, blah, 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 blah. This stacks up to 15%. This particular perk in the hands of the right player is going to be top tier. And this is what's crazy. It won't be so good in arenas, I don't think, because, you know, it's going to be hard to get those stacks built up. But I really, where I find this will find its way into best in slot perk on certain particular players' gears, obviously well-skilled players, is in wars. Getting massive AoE kills, stacking empowerment, and this is up to 15 times. That's a 30% empowerment buff, and it doesn't go away. It just stays. It's all the time. This could be a very powerful perk in the right hands. This is one to keep an eye on for sure. Invigorated Punishment. Abilities deal 3% bonus damage per buff on target. This could also be an interesting one. I don't necessarily think that it's going to inch its way out of, you know, of a weapon perk. I think this is where this is going to land. Abilities deal 3% bonus damage per buff, because buffs are pretty, you know, you don't recognize it, but you have a few buffs on you at all times. So that's just one to keep an eye on, but I do think it's on weapon. And then if it's on weapon, it's going to be hard to see that inching out other abilities that deal increased amounts of damage. The final one is Shirking Empowerment. After successfully dodging an attack, obtain Empower, increasing damage dealt by 4% by 10 seconds. This does stack 4 times, which is 16% empowerment. I think the most interesting thing about Shirking Empowerment is it's currently available on amulets only. Now, why that's important is that currently at this point in time in New World, amulets have only been home for defensive perks. So Shirking Empowerment would have the first space, if I'm not mistaken, of an offensive perk on an amulet. And that is very, very, very good. Again, just because as far as offense goes, having control over certain things like that and how much damage you can deal is way more important than some of your defensive things that you would typically be looking for on an amulet. So obviously you're still going to want health, but Shirking Empowerment is definitely going to find its way on a lot of PvP amulets out there, just for the increased amount of damage that can give just by dodging abilities. Let's just go ahead and name the top 3 here that we kind of went through. Shirking Empowerment is one to look for. Mortal Empowerment is definitely something to keep your eyes on, especially in the hands of those bruisers in wars that can just go ham. If they get a 30% damage buff, it's game over. They are reaping, they are maelstroming, they are grab-welling you to death around, you know, their gridded heavy attacks. It's gonna be insane. That's one to look out for too. And then obviously the last one. The last 2, these are kind of honorable mentions here, are Invigorating Punishment and Purifying Crits. Pretty interesting ones there. But there you have it. Those are the new PvP-specific perks. Keep an eye on Shirking Empowerment and Mortal Empowerment. Those are going to be 2 interesting perks on gear. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. What do you guys think about the new PvP perks? Let us know in the comments below. And we'll see you in the next video.